I want to thank everybody for being here for the October meeting of the Cooperative Forecasting Group. First item on the agenda is approval of the August 23rd minutes. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at them and any corrections or changes to the minutes?
I'll approve them.
Okay. We have a motion to approve. A second?
I'll second. Jamie Williams.
Okay. Motion to approve in a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is methods for calculating holding capacity and land use potential for Howard County. So we will turn that over to Howard County.
Okay, James, you should have the ability to share your screen at this point.
Okay. I take it you can hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, let me get that going then.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Okay, so you have a view of the title slide?
No, not yet.
Well, that's not good. What do you see?
Just the sort of the screen with all the names of the attendees. So we don't have you. It looks like you're not sharing your screen just yet.
Oh, yeah, that would be helpful to do.
And in the bar, there's an icon that says share screen with an up arrow.
Okay. Let's try that again. Share screen, sharing screen.
Here we go.
There we go.
Yay. Okay. How about now?
You got it just right. We can just see the presentation only.
Okay. Yeah, that was intentional, actually. I just wanted it to be awkward early on to just get it out of the way. So I planned on not knowing how to share my screen to start out. So, all right, anyway, good morning, Cooperative Forecasting Group. I'm James Wilkerson, and I am the Planning Supervisor for the Research Division of Howard County's Department of Planning and Zoning. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to introduce you to our land use and development monitoring database and speak about some of the analytical applications of the data managed within it. First, I'd like to thank Sean and BMC for this opportunity. When utilizing a system for analyzing holding capacity and land use potential, there are several questions that we seek to answer. The two most important questions are, where is there capacity for future growth, and how much growth can be facilitated? In Howard County, growth is going to come from undeveloped land, parcels that have no active use or development plans, and underutilized land, parcels that have space enough for additional development per respective zoning regulations. This data is essential for projecting and planning for future growth. It informs our general plan, which was just adopted last week, feeds into the public school system's enrollment projections and redistricting decisions, and contributes to regional planning as part of this cooperative forecasting group. The analyses we perform are done so using our land use data and development monitoring database, which I have dubbed Land Use 2.0, even though numerically that makes absolutely no sense. In Howard County, we have a significant advantage when it comes to land use data, which is diligent cataloging and maintenance that dates back over half a century. From hand-drawn maps and ledger books to a geodatabase of models, our land use data has transitioned through several generations of storage and display. In 2019, I assumed responsibility for this data, migrating it into ArcGIS Pro from MapInfo and automating significant portions of updating and maintenance procedures. I also overhauled the attribution and geometry of the data. For the sake of consistency in presentations, I'm going to show several charts that correlate to the data as of September 30th, 2022. These charts are in the process of being updated as part of our annual projections. While 1 year out of date, some major themes hold true. Howard County is still nearly 40% permanently preserved, and our undeveloped land is now at about roughly 5% of our total acres, meaning we actually have very little land on which to project any kind of a holding capacity. This historic chart of land use acres shows that 30 years ago, over 1/3 of the land in Howard County was undeveloped. While the decrease from 34% to 7% is very significant, it's important to note that during this time, that nearly as much land has been preserved or designated as open space as has been developed. Land Use 2.0 takes the existing inventory of parcels and associated activity and modifies it as new development plans and building permits are approved. The very fabric of land use, its parcel geometry, is updated from CAD engineering data submitted with development plans, and subsequent plans and permits see modifications made to attribute data of those parcels. Because we integrate with our permit and development plan data, at any given time, we are able to determine the actual inventory of built and pending development. Non-residential development is recorded in acres, while residential development is recorded in acres and housing units. As of September 30th, 2022, Howard County had 20,255 housing units recorded as either being within the planning process or as capacity on undeveloped acres. Because of the detailed information pulled from plans and permits, we know the unit types for planned development, and zoning informs our estimates for undeveloped land. When plans are submitted for new development, several changes take place. First, the code changes, that's the land use code, based on the planned development relative to the former use. The project footprint will dictate the new parcel divisions and therefore acreages. For residential projects, units and their types must be accounted for. A single parcel could see its attributes shifted throughout 5 different sections of attributes coincidental with the development's progress. Undeveloped attributes are applied to parcels with no existing or planned use. So these are the attributes within which we would project capacity for fully undeveloped, uncommitted parcels. When a plan is first submitted, the acres are moved to the in-process section and residential units are attributed. So if you had a larger process that was beginning the subdivision process, once that first plan comes in, it's not subdividing yet, but we know that a portion of it is going to be subdivided, maybe all of it. And we can account for there being some existing acreage, some in-process acreage, or if you have a plan that has multiple phases, you'll see that we can record acres and units throughout. So this is one record within GIS. But because of the different attributes, we can actually account for what at times are really dynamic multi-phase projects going on in just a single record. Okay, when record plats are approved, which delineate official lot lines, those values then shift to the unbuilt attribute section, and subdivisions will see this attribution dispersed among newly created parcels. So at this point, when we receive a record plat, we break out the geometry, we attribute the individual new parcels based on the plans, and then we can remove their associated data from the attribute data of the parent parcel if any of that still remains, so that everything is fully and appropriately represented. When construction permits are issued, the units and acres shift to the permit attribute section. And finally, with the issuance of use and occupancy permits or their non-residential equivalent, those values shift into an existing designation. A single parcel proceeds through the planning process as a single record. Linkages to parcel boundaries maintain geometry, while the advanced attribution simplifies tabular data maintenance. Based on where the attribute values are, we can reliably predict how much time remains before the acres and units are realized. And by that, I mean, depending on the development plan type that we have or the permit that's been issued for a given parcel, we can estimate how much time remains before those acres and those units are going to be built and considered existing. So we know that if something has a construction permit issued, it's likely going to be built within a year or two, depending on the size of the project. If we have record plats that have been issued and we know lot lines have been delineated, we know that we're somewhere between 2 to 4 years out, depending on the size of the project. And when a plan first comes in, also, this is dependent on the size and complexity of the project, we know that we're going to be anywhere from 3 to 5 or more years out. But based on those characteristics, we can project when those units and when those acreages are going to come online and know what year we can project them into with a pretty high degree of reliability. So here we'll briefly look at how record plats are processed. First, the DWG CAD data from the developer is converted for use in GIS, and naming conventions are applied. The user then points the next tool to this newly created data and inputs pertinent information found on the plan submission itself and not present in the CAD data. This step also generates the lot lines and address points used by our Department of Technology and Communication Services to update the county's parcel boundaries and address data, which in turn later is used to update our land use parcels after the review is complete. So we create data, we provide it to the department that maintains our address points, maintains our parcel polygons, and then after that's implemented, it feeds back into our own updating process. The final step applies the needed formatting of the data for land use attribution and performs a series of spatial joins and calculations, resulting in points that can be overlaid on existing parcels to identify where changes in land use need to be made and what those changes should be according to the new data's attributes. We also process building permits from the Department of Inspections, Licensing, and Permitting. These models take records downloaded from the DILP database for various permit types, geocodes them, and formats their attributes for incorporation into land use. The generated points are then overlaid with land use to flag changing parcels and provide the attribute information that will dictate changes in land use's attributes. These generated points are then stored in an archive for GIS permit data tracking. So we actually have a database of geocoded permits dating back to, I think, 1992. And so that really helps us then if we have to pull data by certain time ranges in order to perform different analyses. So beginning with our general plan process, and like I said, that just wrapped up about a week ago and was officially adopted. We also incorporated a tool called Community Viz. And this is basically an extension for ArcMap that allows for dynamic on-the-fly forecasting. And by on the fly, I mean that given, you can see here these interactive controls, you can adjust parameters while you're doing the analyses, and it will instantly update the results. So it allows for more instantaneous adjustments to be made and visualized. And it's also really good for scenario planning, which for our general plan process was ideal so that we could more easily sort of tweak parameters and see how changing certain factors would impact the sort of long-term outlook, and then present several different viable scenarios. So the first step in Community Viz is to determine carrying capacity of a parcel, which is done by removing development obstacles from the parcel inventory. And so basically what it does is it takes several different layers And so those can be buffers, steep slopes, erodible soils, easements, anything that based on your knowledge, your regulations is seen as a hazard and an obstacle to development, and where you're not going to be building any sorts of new structures. And it sort of removes those basically using an erase from the parcel fabric itself. So you know how much land within a parcel remains that is actually developable, and sort of helps you hone in more accurately on what that capacity is versus just taking the parcel acreage, applying your zoning densities and regulations. This now is providing a little bit more of a real world aspect to the analysis. A suitability analysis is then performed, and this takes into account proximities, such as distances to existing infrastructure and amenities, and you can apply positive or negative relationships that will adjust the scoring. So proximity to, say, industrial areas might then be a negative relationship for new residential development, whereas proximity to schools, proximity to existing infrastructure like roads, water, and sewer are going to be more of a pull factor for new development and a positive relationship. So a development status is then applied to each parcel based on its current conditions. Developed land without capacity is skipped over for projections. Undeveloped and redevelopment parcels are identified based on their designation in land use, such as parking lots or commercial parcels within zones that allow for residential or mixed-use development. These statuses tell the model that all of the remaining land can be forecast upon. Parcels flagged as having re-subdivision potential are those with an existing use that cannot be fully redeveloped to another use or higher density, but do have enough land to subdivide into multiple parcels with holding capacity on those newly created parcels. Future growth is allocated based on a combination of the previously discussed components. The model first identifies and removes existing development that has a development status of developed. The model then assigns growth to parcels with known plans and permits. In process, unbuilt, and permit have 3 different ranges of time associated with them. For example, if a parcel has been issued development permits, we know it is approved for construction and likely already underway. These parcels will be assigned a 1 or 2 year out projection. For all remaining land that is not developed and does not have active plans, permits, or projections, a capacity is assigned based on density limits, open space requirements, and zoning regulations fed into the model from an Excel spreadsheet. These factors are applied to the developable acres and a year projected based on how suitable and desirable the parcel is considered based on previously identified factors. The model also provides a minimum and maximum for parcels where growth could differ, such as if townhouses and apartments are both able to be allocated, it lets you know how many of each you could do, or some combination of the two. This map displays our 5 regional planning areas, which we utilize for discussions about growth and development, and for when we are discussing our long-term projections. So last year's projections showed that the region with the most development potential is Columbia. This is due to the Downtown Columbia Master Plan, which has allowed for significant redevelopment opportunities. The western half of the county has very limited potential due to the various restrictions in place from zoning, growth tiers, and the limited availability of infrastructure. I already got it pulled up here. Our land use data is updated daily, though projections are only performed annually or on an as-needed basis. For our land use and development monitoring, we deploy Power BI to display the most pertinent statistics in a quickly accessible manner. So just to give you a quick overview of that, this is integrated with our land use data, as well as a few other layers from GIS, and also that permitting data that I had mentioned earlier. And so at any given time, you can go in here and, these are sortable, but you can sort of see statistics about the current state of development within Howard County. Here you can see the distribution of housing units. Once more, we're employing that regional planning area. You can toggle by the current completed permits that have been issued year to date, as well as the, so completed are your UNOs, and issued are the development construction permits. And so there's just a number of different ways that we break this data down for our own ability to quickly reference it. Finally, I'd like to leave you with some advice regarding holding capacities. Enhancing the accuracy and precision of your data on the front end will result in similar benefits to your results in analysis. The more timely your data is for updating, the more confident you will be in your projections. Dynamic functionality and integration options, along with the previous recommendations, will bolster your data's reliability. Most importantly, we've all been there, and this is very easy to do. Do not confuse holding capacity with holding out for a hero. They have very different needs, and your data being fresh from the fight or larger than life will serve you none. Just something to look out for. I run into this all the time. So just some advice there at the end. Thank you for your time this morning. I would like to dedicate this presentation to the incredible stock photo options in PowerPoint. Any questions or comments?
Well, thank you. That's a very detailed presentation, and congratulations on the adoption of the general plan. I know that's a huge accomplishment, so congratulations on that. Any questions for James?
Hey,
go ahead.
James. So how do you account for, is infill development factored into this, or is this looking at strictly that land that's available for development?
So infill was something that, because of, we had the benefit of recently doing our projections coincidental with the general planning.
Mhm.
And so with infill, we had very specific sites that were identified through that process, which something like Community Viz does help to identify. But then that was more tailored down based on some of the actual knowledge we had, some of the feedback we were getting from the community, helped to sort of adjust that information.
Okay.
Well, I certainly have to say, I mean, it's very impressive how real time it looks like all that information is, tracking the permits, tracking them through the process, knowing where they're going to be, mapping them out. I mean, that's a big accomplishment to have that all in one place and have that accessible to everybody. It's very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge benefit to us. And honestly, I'm kind of standing on the shoulders of giants. We've been meticulously maintaining data to that degree for a very, very long time. So, it's probably tough to start that kind of an effort from scratch, but very doable to sort of integrate a couple of these other forms of data in order to do this more timely, because then having that on hand, I mean, we get questions all the time from, the county council or the county executive's office, let alone in the department. Being able to have that degree of temporal accuracy has just been huge.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I get asked, what's in the pipeline, what's coming next, background for APFO studies or traffic studies, or, just having that background data at your fingertips. I mean, must save a tremendous amount of time as well.
Yeah, I had a question for the group as well. So James, how long have you guys been using Community Viz in your planning process?
So really, it just started with the general plan. So probably the last 3 years. And before Community Viz, we had a very similar process that we did in-house. It's just Community Viz allows for much greater intricacy, and it's also a time savings because of how many of the things are pre-built. Much of what it's doing, I have previously modeled in a less dynamic way, so it takes a little bit more time to operate than those on the fly adjustments that you can make. And it also is a little bit limited relative to what Community Viz has. But we were previously doing things like, removing obstacles to development to sort of pare down a parcel to a more realistic size, and then applying our zoning densities and the like.
Okay, and that the Power BI land use reporter table that you were showing, is that's a public facing?
It's not.
Okay.
It's just for internal use.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, no, I think it's interesting to hear about how you've tied all these things together. Does anyone on the call, do any of the other local jurisdictions, are you guys using any land use modeling software similar to what Community Viz is in Howard County?
Queen Anne's is not.
Okay.
We have not taken that step.
Okay,
Baltimore City is not either.
okay. All right.
I have a question. Does Community Viz, does it only work with, I thought you mentioned Arc Map.
Yeah,
Does it work with Arc Pro?
so they were developing an Arc Pro version, and I'd have to check if that's even available yet, because that was years in the development. And then the company that owned Community Viz sold to, I think it's the University of Texas A&M.
Hmm.
So they purchased the software and are now maintaining it. And so I haven't checked with the updates to it since then. But I know that was something they had spent multiple years trying to do.
Okay, because I mean, I know that Arc Maps, gradually phasing out. And I mean, we're basically using Arc Pro now.
Yeah, we use Arc Pro for pretty much everything. So having to take a step back and into Arc Map to use that extension was kind of jarring when you've just been using nothing but Pro for years.
I was just
I
gonna
was
say,
just,
we transitioned away from ArcMap, but that I'm kind of interested in what modeling capabilities that software has. And you mentioned that it has land use modeling, but specifically what type of modeling? Is it forecasting or for housing, or what specific type of modeling can you do with it?
I mean, it does a little bit of everything, because like with a general plan, there's so much that needs to be considered. I will say that it seems to do a better job, and I mean, kind of obvious. I think we all would do a better job when it comes to projecting on completely undeveloped areas versus when you're factoring in infill and redevelopment. But it definitely does that. I think at times it tries to do maybe a little bit too much, because you can really customize this in terms of, like putting in setbacks and having to sort of like parse out different amounts of space requirements that might have to go to things like amenities and right of way and all of this to really sort of customize and get in the weeds with how individual parcels would develop. But I mean, it really does. It's primarily focused on residential units and commercial square footages. So, it can break it out based on, industrial, office, retail and service. But really a lot of it's just, it's a faster, easier, more dynamic way to just do stuff that we are capable of doing, pulling in a table of zoning that has your densities and has different considerations for square footages and allowable units. So you can then apply things like different sorts of population projections in terms of household yields. So it does a good bit of stuff, and you can even there are aspects of it that we didn't even get into, like where it will try to do some modeling based on impacts to transit and traffic and trip times and all of this by using some of those network analyst functions.
Okay. Are you seeing a lot of redevelopment in Howard County? Not really.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing we're starting to see more of that, and that's because we are running out of inventory. So I said earlier, we have about like 5% of our land is fully undeveloped. So in order to do a lot of the development that we're going to want moving forward, we're seeing more redevelopment and infill projects that are coming in now, and quite a few have already been implemented. But we are seeing a lot of our older like strip malls and commercial areas redevelop with greater sort of density of shops, new facades, or implementing then mixed use and having some residential on top of ground floor commercial. And in downtown Columbia, there's a good bit of that development that's taken place was developing parking lots. So right now, the area that's seeing the most new development is the lakefront. So that's on Lake Kittamaqundi. It's where the iconic Whole Foods is. That was a Frank Gehry design. And that area, we're seeing older buildings from the early days of Columbia's, built in the 60s, being torn down, and them, as well as the parking lots around them, being used for combinations of parking garages with commercial and residential, like just tons of different mixed uses going on in these areas.
So I haven't had a chance yet to look through the plan that was just adopted, but did Columbia Gateway, was that included in that?
Oh boy. So that was kind of a controversial topic, Gateway, because that will all depend on what the landowners of Gateway wind up doing in the future.
Okay.
So we have mention of it, but Gateway itself is actually about to go through its own master planning process, similar to what downtown Columbia did back in 2010. And given the size of it, I mean, it's significantly larger than downtown Columbia.
Mhm.
And given that area, the projections there could be there's a huge range of what could be there. And so we didn't really want to try and pin down a very specific view for it, since that's still kind of up in the air and there are a lot of different potential scenarios that could play out there.
Okay, gotcha. I understand what you're saying. Thanks, James. All right.
Okay, any other questions for James? Comments? Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. It was excellent. Next item on the agenda, briefing on updates to BMC data dashboards. Charles Baber.
So, good morning. I just want, we shared this with you a while back, some initial progress on our dashboards, and just wanted to we finalize them, and we want to try to maintain them, and also get some input from you all about other census variables to add. So back under the BMC's webpage, baltimoremetro.org, under transportation planning areas, there's the planning area dashboard. So if you click on that, you'll come up with a series of dashboards. You're welcome to look at any ones that you want, but we'll focus on this demographic dashboard. And so there is a little bit of an issue problem, and this is with size. Working with our web page person to try to fix the size issue. But if you use the handles and come down to the far right hand corner, if you click on full screen, it's going to be a little bit better. So anyway, there's a total of 4 dashboards, and they're using various tables, American Community Survey tables. So employment, you can see the table there for income, and then tenure, race, and tenure and income. And so across the top are the 4 different dashboards. We'll just go through one, and then on your own you can change them around. So the area that we've downloaded the data for is includes our region plus metropolitan, this side of the Potomac River, Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, so Frederick, Montgomery, DC, and PG County, and then also Adams in York County. And we're looking at, since we're looking at track data, we need to look at the 5-year data sets. And so you either can pick the 2020 5-year data set or the 2021 5-year data set. Just a reminder, I know it's going to be easy to do, but Census advises against comparing data sets with overlapping years. So even though you can see data from the 2 different 5-year data sets, you just be cautioned about comparing them. So the other things that you can filter out, you can select what state you want to look at, or you could select a particular jurisdiction. So let's just select Harford County for the sake of looking at a particular jurisdiction. So then in the map, if you highlight, hover over the map, you can actually you can get some functionality where you can either move the map or zoom in on the, oops. You can zoom in on the map. Why isn't that working? All right, there we go. And then so right now, this is our employment rates, and it's being shown for the various tracks, and then you can get various tables. The employed, population 16 and older, employed. You can get the race, ethnicity, the gender, and then a little bit of a breakdown on the age. This bottom chart here is the top 10 by employment. So right now it's set at county, so since we only have Harford County selected, it's only showing Harford. So if you were to select tracks, it's going to get you the tracks. And you can either sort these tracks by the top or the bottom, and then likewise, if you wanted to either select a track, you could either select a track from up there, or you could select a particular track from down here. And then that's going to be highlighted up here, and then all of a sudden all your tables were to change. You can also do other filters by race if you want to see just only a certain race, or if you want to see a certain sex, gender, or employment status. It's all available. There is something, the Vulnerable Population Index, that's just something that BMC's developed. It's also interfaced, so you can, it's another way to filter if you wanted to look at areas the way we've calculated DPI to select only them. Unfortunately, it doesn't work when you're full screen, but if you go back to the other screen, you can actually, if you click on the download little button down at the bottom, you can actually download either an image or something to put in a PowerPoint. And then if you have Tableau, you can actually download the workbook if you wanted to look at the workbook. And so we're, our goal or attempt here is just to try to make something a little bit easier for you to work with some of these various tables to quickly get data. If you do had a question, if one of these tables were to answer that question, hopefully it's just a resource for you to use. Like I said, we hope to maintain it as the new five-year data sets come about. And we're also interested in expanding it. So if there is a table that you rely on, on a more frequent basis, we're more than happy to add that table to the dashboard and make similar types of charts and maps. I did want to show one other little dashboard, and that's this analysis here. This is analysis of race and ethnicity using the 2010 and 2020 PL. And likewise, if you go to full screen, it looks a little bit nicer. And so this is just looking at, you can either look at 2010 or 2020, and then this is by transportation analysis zones. And so it's looking at the similarity, what is the prevalent race, and then the diversity with the race. So the blue ones are white alone, where that's the predominant race, and then the level of diversity. And this is the census mixes. This is using the census calculation of diversity, which I don't think is necessarily their calculation, but it's a calculation of diversity. And likewise, you could click on a different block and or a different block, meaning you're looking at a particular race and different diversity, and it'll show you the TAZs that fall within that category. There's also the second page allows you to look at a jurisdiction. If you wanted to look at, you have to somewhat remember the TAZs that in 2020 in Baltimore County that were white alone with low population. And it just provides you some information on 2020 or on 2010. So the total population, the population by race, and this is just in the white alone, very low diversity. And then it tells you what percent of the white population in Baltimore County resides in or out of that area, and then also some information on Hispanic and non-Hispanic. And then you can also look at change. So this is the change, and you can click on the various ones. It shows you the change at the TAZ level, what populations are moving in and out in that particular category. So for Black American African with low to medium diversity, this was the change between 2010 and 2020. Just like I said, just making you aware of it. And once again, you can find out all this information back at the BMC's website, transportation planning areas, and then planning area dashboards. And so, like, if you have an idea for a table to add to our demographic, a census table to add to our demographic, something that's available at the tract level, we'd love to add it. And so with that, I'll turn it back over.
Okay, any questions for Charles on the dashboards?
I have a comment. I like this Tableau dashboards. They're nice looking.
Yeah, thank you.
They're
Yeah.
much better than the regular ESRI ones.
Yeah, yeah, it's very similar to Power BI, except Power BI is Microsoft and Tableau is actually another independent, but yeah, we do enjoy Tableau dashboards.
Yeah, they're nice looking. They're good job.
Well, it's amazing how much information you can pack in there. I mean, really. All right, so I encourage everybody to spend a little time looking through the dashboards, getting familiar with them. A lot of work went into them and a lot of good information there. Anything else on the dashboards? Okay, next item on the agenda is UPWP task update. Sean Kimberly.
Okay. All right. So I've modified this agenda item slightly to include not only an update on this group's UPWP consultant task, but to also include some preliminary information on the next set of cooperative forecasts. Starting here with the post-pandemic trends consultant task. We received 4 proposals after the RFP was released. A proposal review team consisting of CFG membership from Howard and Queen Anne's counties, as well as 2 BMC staff members reviewed each of the submitted proposals. We then met together virtually to talk about what we had found in our individual review and to discuss our findings in detail and to try and arrive at a consensus, which we did. So the review team made the decision to award the project to AECOM. We have a preliminary meeting to discuss contract details this afternoon. We then plan to set a date for a project kickoff meeting sometime in early November. And so that is it for now. I'll provide more detail of the next project update in December. So moving on to talk for a few minutes about the next update to the cooperative forecast and the master establishment file or MEF. Now, as a reminder, the master establishment file is an inventory of establishments that can be used by membership in their employment allocation process and is utilized by BMC staff in the development of model inputs, specifically employment by industry by TAZ. The MEF is created through the review and editing of the confidential point level QCW file we have access to through a data sharing agreement with the Maryland Department of Labor. So first, I wanted to provide a sense of what the pandemic did to jobs in the Baltimore region and how the region has responded since the pandemic hit in 2020. And that is what is shown here in this chart of QCW employment levels over time. You may recall the immediate and enormous impact of the pandemic and associated public health measures, with the region losing 175,000 jobs from February to April 2020. That's a decrease of 13.1% of total jobs in a matter of weeks. Since then, the region has added 132,000 jobs, but is still 3.2% short of February 2020 employment levels. This table shows what the impacts were like at different geographies, and to provide some context, looking at the United States, Maryland, the Baltimore region, as well as the counties that comprise the region. You can see that the nation has not only recaptured the number of jobs lost at the onset of the pandemic, but has grown further, adding 3.6 million jobs, or 2.4% beyond February 2020 levels. The same is not true of Maryland and the Baltimore region. 3 years later, Maryland is still 22,000 jobs shy, or about 0.8% of February 2020 employment levels. And the Baltimore region has been slower than the state in its recovery, at least as measured by QCW employment. The region's QCW employment total was still 3.2% short of pre-pandemic employment levels in March of 2023, which is the most recent QCW data available. Now, there are a variety of reasons why differences in recovery might exist between geographies, including things like industry mix, labor force participation, and composition of the population, and changes in productivity or hours worked. Now, those questions, though, are for another day. The purpose of this table for today's meeting is to quantify the changes in employment levels in order to clearly demonstrate the need for an update to the master establishment file. So, as mentioned, there was a decline of 175,000 jobs in the region in the spring of 2020. And in the subsequent 3 years, the region added 132,000 jobs. Now, that's a lot of change in a relatively short amount of time. And as a result of this upheaval, I think it makes sense to develop an updated master establishment file so that changes to the spatial distribution of employment across the region and within your jurisdictions can be reflected in the next set of cooperative forecasts. Now, the precise timing of the next forecast round or round update is yet to be determined. I think it would make sense for this group to discuss this topic in detail at the forthcoming CFG meetings beginning on December 20th. No matter the precise timing of the development of the next set of forecasts, I think it makes sense for the group to include an update to the MEF in that process. The MEF utilized in the support of the development of round 10 was intentionally based upon QCW data from pre-pandemic times, the second quarter of 2019. By early December of 2023, we will have access to QCW data from the second quarter of 2023. This data set is for 4 years after that which was used in round 10, and a full 3 years after the onset of the pandemic. Enough time to get a sense of how things have changed and where we currently stand in terms of employment levels and spatial distribution. This is not to suggest that we are now at a new normal, as the changes in work arrangements and in office and retail space utilization are continuing to evolve. Things are likely to continue to change in the next several years as longer-term commercial real estate leases come up for renewal, and many tenants may seek to reduce their square footage requirements or may adjust their location and or amenity priorities as well. And these are all things that our consultant should help provide some guidance on over the course of the next year or so. Anyhow, the point here is that I think we should build in adequate time in the schedule for the development of, within the development of the next set of cooperative forecasts to accommodate this master establishment file update. So I wanted to provide you with some information to get a sense of the scale of a QCW review and a MEF development task. You may recall that the primary asks for review include school records, government records, federal, state, and local, and including the breakout of departments such as fire and police stations, and large employers, those with 100+ jobs. Any additional work that you can perform beyond this kind of review, say for reviewing records with 50 or 75+ employees, would only serve to improve the quality of the employment allocation and model input development efforts. And remember, as you start to consider how long this might take, that the raw QCW data has improved dramatically over time when it comes to the allocation of public school records. School employment has not been concentrated at the boards of education offices in recent years. And you'll have access to the finalized 2019 MEF, which can be used as a resource and might be particularly helpful with the distribution of government employment, which is sometimes consolidated in one or only a few records. In this table, you can see how many records in March 2023 in your jurisdiction are subject to review under the large employer guidance. While this information is not from the second quarter of 2023, the quarter that would be utilized in the next MAF update, it is closely adjacent and should serve as a good proxy when attempting to estimate the scale of the review. To provide a little bit of context, at the regional level, the number of records containing 100+ jobs declined by about 70 or 3% between the second quarter of 2019 and March 2023. So if we are in agreement that the MEF should be updated with the next set of cooperative forecasts, we, meaning myself and BMC GIS staff, will work toward the goal of having the second quarter 2023 QCW file geocoded and prepared for distribution to CFG membership in time for the December meeting. At the time, at the next meeting, we can discuss the review process and timing in more detail. Just quickly, does that make sense to you all? Do you have any questions? But do you guys think it makes sense to refresh the master establishment file with this next set of cooperative forecasts whenever that is determined to occur? Do you guys agree that it makes sense for us to go through this refresh of the master establishment file as well?
It makes sense.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that 4 years has passed and I think it's time to take a new look at the data, the post-COVID, see what the changes are. What you just presented makes a lot of sense that it's time for an update.
Okay, and like I said, I think at the December meeting, we can, what I can do, I have this is just a rough sketch, a preliminary sketch of what I was thinking the timing might look like if the group were to determine that they want to engage in an update to the forecast and calendar year, or to work on the development of an update in calendar year 2024. I've sort of roughly sketched out what I think that might look like. And I think maybe it would make sense for us at the December 20th meeting of this group for me to pull this slide up in Excel where we can edit it and discuss it and talk about it and talk about people's availability and the interest level from each jurisdiction in participating in an update to the forecasts and calendar year 2024. Steve, that's all I had for that. Does anyone have any questions or comments for me on either of those topics?
Yeah, Sean, I did Baltimore, Larissa Solomaka from Baltimore Development Corporation. And this may not be the appropriate place to ask this question, but when you showed that the updating of the last slide, are you going to be also showing those major employers as they appear in their industry sectors? Or is that kind of information, that forecasting, appearing somewhere else in your analysis and your data collection?
So let me see if I understand your question correctly. So when I was describing that, that process of cleaning the QCW file to.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a process that CFG membership will engage in terms, their assistance is needed to edit that file and make it as accurate as possible. That information that we have is it's available to us through a data sharing agreement. So it's used by the cooperative forecasting group members to assist them in their employment allocation from county totals to transportation analysis zones. And then here at BMC, we will take the industry information associated with those records when we develop model inputs, travel demand model inputs for the next forecast round. So not sure if I answered your question, but if not, please let me know or rephrase and I'll try again.
I guess are you going to be versus aggregate numbers? Say you have 10,000 employers with over 100 employees. Are you going to be able to share with the group a drill down of those 100 of those 10,000 employers per industry sector, like per se life sciences or in logistics or in tourism or something like that? Will it be, is that a component of some other dashboard, the other dashboards that you were showing, that's really not part of this particular update of this,
Yeah,
of this data?
So the information that we're using is provided to us under a data sharing agreement, and it is confidential, and there's restrictions on the use and presentation of that data. And so we use it strictly, this group uses it strictly for the purposes of employment allocation and in the development of model inputs. And we don't use that information in any public facing sense, except when it's really aggregated. And any kind of breakdown of that data, either by detailed industry or by or spatially, would have to be vetted through Maryland Department of Labor's discretion in terms of the data suppression and how they want to protect their data. So what I'm showing you on the screen right now, it's fine to show, you know, this aggregated information at the county level. But if we were to look at specific industries and specific jurisdictions and specific places, you start to whittle down the number of establishments that are there, and then it can become more easily identifiable. And I think that's what the Maryland Department of Labor wants to avoid. But Larissa, if you're looking for employment information in targeted industries, I can use another resource to help you with that. We do have a subscription to Lightcast, and Lightcast is a labor market information provider, and they provide data that has employment by industry from 2-digit to the level of 6-digit specificity. And they have that data available by jurisdiction, by region, and down to tract. So if you have a specific data request, Larissa, or anyone on the call for that matter, I'd be more than happy to help you with that kind of data request.
Thank you.
Certainly. Okay.
Good. Anything else on the UPWP task update or that item? If not, we'll move on to other business. And Sean, do we have any other business?
Yes, I do have a couple things, and then anyone else that wants to go is certainly free to. The first thing is an item that came up to me yesterday. I have a coworker here at BNC that is working on a draft RFP for a consultant task to help local jurisdictions with EV charging. The project would be focused on higher density residential areas where people may not have access to a private garage to charge their cars. So they're looking to identify high intensity residential areas in each of the region's local jurisdiction. Thinking of areas with concentrations of multifamily buildings, townhomes or row homes, and perhaps mixed use developments. The ask here would be for you to provide the zoning codes or classifications in your jurisdiction that could be used to identify these areas. So for example, in jurisdiction X, codes R5 through R10 might refer to townhome and multifamily residential and should be included in this type of analysis. And there are likely several other codes that should be considered. You know, for example, perhaps in your jurisdiction, apartments are classified differently, you know, maybe as commercial. The point is that it would be helpful if someone familiar with zoning in each jurisdiction could provide us with a list of which codes or classifications typically include high density residential. And this would save a lot of time and effort on our end, and it would improve our analysis to receive this kind of local input. Now, note that this is intended to serve only as a rough cut identification of areas that could be considered for residential EV chargers. It's not an exhaustive or fully comprehensive effort. We understand that there will be cases that have exceptions to the prevailing zoning code, but is this the kind of information that you all on the line have readily available and could provide me with? And if so, could you email me a list of these codes and classifications? And if not, can you send me the contact information of the relevant staff person at your jurisdiction? This would be great if it's something that you guys could respond to me within the next week or so. Does that sound like a reasonable request? You guys work with this data fairly regularly?
Yeah, we have access. Yeah, I can provide that for you.
All right. Great. On the line, does anyone have any questions about that request, or does that make sense to you all?
No, I can certainly provide that. You know, we only have a few zoning districts and I can get them to you pretty quickly.
Okay, great.
So you basically want the list of our zoning codes?
Yeah, your audio dropped out just a little bit. I could hear you a little bit, but it
Okay.
faded.
So you basically want our zoning codes and what they mean, or?
Well, what internally, we do have, our GIS person has a zoning layer from each jurisdiction that was pulled, I think, in June of this year. So we have a spatial layer of the zoning for each jurisdiction. What we're asking for is for someone to identify which of the zoning classifications would qualify for high intensity residential development.
Okay, I'll see what I can find out.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Do you just want zoning data or do you want other types of data? I mean, we have address points that tell, okay, this is a residential structure, this is an apartment or a condo or a townhouse or something that, and we can pull out all the address points for apartments or something like that, provide that to you. So you have the actual location of where the buildings are and an idea of number of units that are there.
That sounds very interesting and very detailed, and that would be that would be great if available. I think for anyone else on the line that might not have that level of detail, just providing that list of the zoning codes that would qualify as high intensity residential would at least allow us to get to a rougher sort of starting point of where in your jurisdiction this type of development is concentrated. That's really what they're trying to get at, but that's great, Rick, if you have that.
Yeah, I mean, I can provide that to you as well as kind of ancillary.
That
data.
would be terrific.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just that, yeah, what he's talking about is actual existing land use.
Yeah, I
what's
lost
now on the
you there
ground now,
again.
which may not match the zoning. So,
Kathleen, I could hear, but so your audio is coming through, but it's
yeah, they gave me a new laptop and apparently it's not as good. What I'm saying is, it's just that the zoning, what he's talking about is existing land use. He has some existing land use data. But you just want the zoning, which might not necessarily match what's on the ground.
I think that's okay. If you provide me with those zoning classifications, I think we can work with that initially. Because they're in the RFP sort of process and they're just trying to define the sort of the rough sketch of where these areas are. And I think as they get into project work, then they may dig in a little further and look for more detail.
Okay. Because right now we don't, we still need to update our existing land use layer, which probably would be more helpful for this project.
Okay, good to know. In the interim, I think providing the zoning classifications would suffice for this purpose at this time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Kathleen.
Don, would you be able to just write up a blurb for what that request entails? I'll pass it along to a colleague who was working on something similar kind of as a personal project and I know would be interested and would be happy to provide you with the data or with the information.
Sure, Austin. I think either this afternoon or tomorrow I'll send out an email to the group with presentation information from today's meeting, and in that I'll include a few of the details of what this request is of you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so on to the next sort of new business. A note for people who aren't aware, the Maryland Department of Planning State Data Center has their annual meeting tomorrow. And it is virtual. And so if you're interested, you can go to the Maryland Department of Planning State Data Center website, and there's I think right when the page opens, there's a window where you can sign up to attend that. Finally, and this is something we can talk about in December, but I did want to see what you guys think about an option of alternating virtual and in-person meetings, maybe beginning in 2024. There are several other committees that are housed here at BMC, BRTB that are sort of adopting that approach of having alternating between in-person and virtual. We can continue, of course, to support a hybrid approach for those that can't make it. But maybe we can have a discussion at the December 20th meeting to see what membership thinks of that, and we can talk about the pluses and minuses of that kind of approach. But Steve, that's it that I had for new business.
Okay, we'll plan to have that discussion in December.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any business they want to put before the group or discuss? Okay, if not, the next meeting is December 20th. And we'll look for a motion to adjourn. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
There you go.
All right, thank you very much. And we will see everybody back here virtually on December 20th.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.